Welcome to Road to Billions podcast, the mentality of an entrepreneur. With your host, Moise Bertrand.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is your host, Moise Bertrand of Road to Business podcast. It's been an amazing journey, you guys. I appreciate everybody who's been listening, tuning in, and of course, showing love on every episode, on every podcast. For my new listeners, welcome to the podcast that's full of knowledge. For my old listeners, I love your family, man, and continue to just support me and just, share this podcast with friends and families. And of course, just listen to it on your way to work, on your spare time, when you're in the shower, people tell me to use my podcast for these things, but I'm just letting you guys know, play it while you just sitting around, it's always good to have it as a background sound. Today, I'm just going to talk about something that a lot of people don't like to talk about real touchy subject, but I feel like I'm the person to speak about it. I'm the person to really just break it open. And what I'm pretty much going to gear towards is working with only business savvy people and not friends. Now, you want to work with the competent and not work with your friends. And the reason I say that is because I'm not going to say you can't work with your friends. I'm not going to say work with friends is bad or is a red flag or you shouldn't do business. All I'm saying is you have to realize when it comes down to money and obviously business, things could get a little crazy and that could really mess up the relationships you have with your friends if things don't work out the way it needs to work out. Now, if it works out, cool. You guys have that one of a million success stories of friends coming together and actually making something actualize in person in comparison to it being defeated and going to court and all that good stuff. So the reason why you don't want to work with your friends is because, for one, your friends are only going to see you as their friend, right? It's never going to be a real business partner dynamic. And what do I mean by that? They may not call you appropriately by your name, right? They're going to call you by your nickname. And that's all cool, like I said. But when it gets to business, you want to do things in a business savvy way. They may not want to sign contracts. They just want to shake on it. They may just tell you, hey, you don't trust me. They may feel like, why are you in charge? Why are you doing these things? Why not me? If that's the dynamic. Another thing is as well, if money's lost or money's made, then, when money's lost, everybody's just going against each other. And if you have a good friend of yours, you've been friends for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I don't know how long, but that's your real friend, don't do business with them. Because things are bound to go sour sometimes, in business. And it's nothing that you probably did or they did. It's probably the dynamic of the actual business deal that took place. And a lot of people, they can't bounce back from it. I know I couldn't bounce back from it when, some of my friends, ex-friends now, who I did business with in the past, they didn't really see the future, right? They didn't see the visualization that I had for myself. And when I try to bring people along the journey to make this a reality for myself, to achieve these accomplishments and these goals I have for myself, the people I wanted to bring with me held me back a lot more than myself, than my actual self. You know how you feel like you're holding yourself back? The people around you could hold yourself back also, because you can't be the person you need to be, right? Because before business, you guys are friends. So you may not be able to talk to him or talk to her in a certain way. You may not be able to enforce certain boundaries and rules because you guys still have that power dynamic. Now, when it goes from switching that from business back to friendship and friendship back to business, it kind of, in my opinion, it kind of like merges it into murky water, right? Because you don't know if that business deal that you guys had earlier that day fell through could affect your relationship, right? Oh, bro, you weren't supposed to say that. Why'd you set this job for so less? You're not making as much money. The company isn't making much money as we thought it would be, bro. I lost more money. So it was a lot of things that's going to start piling up when things go bad. Even things as such as people may want to even take you to court, or you may need to take people to court. And that could get very tricky, like I said. And if you really value relationships, man, don't even do no business with your spouse, friends, nor family, right? Because all that is this immediate people, and they only know you from one source, right? They only know you from being a friend. So they can't look at you being, sadly to say, this cutthroat person who need to be enforcing rules and boundaries, right? And some people might feel like you're trying to be too bossy. Some people might feel like you're too being in control. But this is the business side of things. And you hate for people to see that side of you because this is not you really. But business is about being a shark and being sharp, you know? And when I say shark, I mean, don't be out here just doing fucked up shit. But a shark is somebody who's tenaciously chasing their goals. And sharks, they don't really stop. You know, they go through everything. And you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that person who have to leave people behind after they were just with you on this journey, because that's going to create a whole nother type of conflict, right? So I feel like, you know, if that's your real friend, man, just allow them to support you from the sideline, friends and family, like I said, close acquaintances, even spouses, because that could get real tricky, man. I remember when I first had my own marketing company with a woman of mine who, you know, we're no longer dating, but we had a marketing company, and that created a lot of tension because, you know, money's getting involved, right? And when money's getting involved with your significant other, things get a little bit murky. Like, who deserves what? You know, how does this get paid? You know, why does this get paid? You know, who gets the money first? You know, why does it? So it was a lot of things that took place that I feel like, man, I can't work with a woman I really want to be with, right? And Donald Trump, you know, I know a lot of people who have mixed feelings about him. He also said this previously. He just mentioned that he would never have his wife work because it takes her out of her feminine, you know, energy and brings her into her masculine energy. And you don't want your woman feeling like that. You don't want your woman running numbers and thinking critically. You just want her to be a pretty woman, sitting nice, you know, obviously taking care of the kids, taking care of the household, but you don't want to put that pressure of business, you know, on her, those operations. And women could tell you that, man. Women could tell you business is not a fun sport, especially when it relates to women who do hair and women who do makeup and women who just sell a product, you know, or even conduct a service. They'll tell you, man, it's cutthroat sometimes, chasing clients, you know, even having the fallouts with their friends who at once they was best of friends, you know, and, you know, that hurts. You know, that really hurts when you have people you really want to come up with, but they just can't stick to the script. And sticking to the script could be mean like them just being who they are, but who you need them to be in that very moment, right? I don't need you to be my friend right now. I need you to be a realist, right? And you can't separate the two. You can't tell me, hey, Mo, you fucked up on this. Hey, Mo, I love the way you're doing this. Hey, Mo, thank you for this. Hey, Mo, I think we should go about this. No, it's, hey, bro, I think we should go ahead and, you know, just let, you know, it's not that urgency. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't come with urgency when you work with friends. It only comes with urgency when you have other people's money and they don't really know you as much. You get what I'm saying? Like when you have somebody else's money, then you're on point. But when it's your friend's money and he knows you're involved or she knows you're involved as well, yeah, the urgency is there. But whoever started that idea, whoever started that real first thought of opening that business, that's the person who has all the urgency in the world, realistically. And if you're that person who's always learning to or even tending to lead groups or managing projects and everything like that, pretty much you're this person who have that urgency in your body. And not everybody walks around with that urgency, like, sadly. And that could really hinder your business. That could really squander a lot of time and just, you know, create unnecessary conversations and drama when, you know, the answer is right there in front of you. Urgency. But not everybody has that urgency. And when you work with friends and stuff like that, their personal lives affect you as well. You know, who they are outside of business affects you. So it was people I worked with, man, that did some bullshit and, you know, they're tied to me. And, you know, that eventually made me look crazy. So I had to sever ties with them, you know. But at one point, they was a good friend, you know, turned into, sadly, a foe. But that happens when business goes really, really sour, right? And you lose everything. You lose your friends. You lose who you worked with, obviously, if it's a close acquaintance or even a spouse, because everything just get mumbo jumbo. And that's why it's more realistic to work with people who, I'm not going to say are strangers, but more so strangers and friendships, but, you know, friends in business. You like how I did just that? that pretty much just means when we're strangers as friends, me and you don't know each other's personal life. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what you do after 5 o'clock. I don't know what you do before 9 a.m. I don't know what you do at nighttime. I don't know. I'm not concerned about what you do in your personal life. You know what I'm concerned about? The personal development of the business. So therefore, we're friends in business. So when it comes to running errands, when it comes to taking care of projects, when it comes to take care of clients and leads and marketing and all that good stuff, we're now friends because we have to be on the same page. But outside of this business, we don't have to communicate. We don't have to be, buddy and stuff like that. And it's not because you don't want to be somebody who's cutthroat or just like cold or anything like that. You just got to know how to differentiate too. You have your coworkers, and then you have your coworkers, and then you have friends, right? Your coworkers are not your friends. They're your job buddies, right? They're there to complete the task that you guys are there working for. Now, you may not even like your coworker, but you guys have mutual respect for each other. And that's how business is supposed to be. You may not agree. You may not disagree, right? You may not see eye to eye. You may not like this person's personality. But in business, you don't know who you're going to run into, right? You may work with a client who is going to give you hell, but that's just them as a person. You know what I'm saying? But when you get off that business side of things and you go home to your family, you still have your kids, you still have your wife, you still have your mom, you still have your immediate sisters and, friends to come home and revert that energy into a bliss, joyful companionship energy. You know what I'm saying? It's not that cutthroat, cold energy that you was at work or dealing with business. You're able to flip that refraction. But if you have both in your life, friends and family who's doing business with you, and then you got to go back home and convert that to quote unquote a friend time and family time, it's not going to work, because at the end of the day, business is going to be brought up. The feelings is going to be lingering from business, and it's always good just to keep those two separate. That's I said, you don't want it to affect your family dynamic. Now, a lot of people, they still feel like they can make it work, and I'm going to keep it real. I've never seen it, man. Every time I see a couple doing something together, man, it's always something that's going to come down to, for some reason, it's always coming down to money and, just dishonesty, man. And I see it all the time. Things are always broken up. They're always broken up in the middle of a business deal or even years of business together. Things that go far-fetched. And I just think it's the stress from the business and maintaining a relationship, whether you're in a relationship or this is your friendship, maintaining those two sides is very difficult. Business partners and then going back to be friends, it's kind of hard. You know what I'm saying? So I try to tell people, just separate it, man. Separate the two. You're not a bad person for not wanting to work with your friends, your family, and everybody because at the end of the day, strangers are who is going to support you. You know what I'm saying? When I dropped this podcast, when I made this podcast 2020, was it 2020 or 2019? It was one of the two, man. When I first made this podcast, I didn't need the validation of my friends or spouses or family to say, hey, this is a great idea. I just did it. And the thing about that is me doing this is how I get to talk to you guys without having to meet with you guys in person, if that makes sense. And the business is still going. The podcast is still growing. The podcast is still going. And the people I wanted to see this podcast grow is no longer around. So that only lets you know that everything is bound to end. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be in 10 years, 15 years, but everything's bound to end. And everything comes down to who's around when everything comes down to the end. And you want to keep the people who are going to give you good vibes around. Business partners, they come and go. You know what I'm saying? You may not do a business deal with everybody. This business partner may not work on every deal with you. You know what I'm saying? But you respect them because they allowed you to do business with them. But your friends and family, they can't really judge you because who you show to them is who you are. If that's who you really are, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying if you out here putting up a front, but they see who you are. They know you're bad, you're good, you're ugly, you're pretty, I'm not saying you're ugly or pretty. I'm saying the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty. You know what I'm saying? But they know you, and you don't want to get that mixed up in business, man. Having them part of business and bring that back to friendships gets really misconstrued and everything, and people just feels like it's just a lot to handle, right? And you don't want that burden on anybody, let alone yourself. If you're gonna still have friends by the end of this business deal, if you're still gonna be able to bounce back from this debt, bounce back from the collateral damage, And I feel like a lot of people, they want to bring everybody on a journey, and you can't do that, man. You got to really ask yourself, why do you want to bring everybody on a journey? I think you should go on the journey yourself and then bring back the resources and everything like that when your cup is full. When you finally are able to distinguish and differentiate your livelihood, you're able to put business aside and friendship aside, but you already accomplished the business side of things. Then you could just, eventually maybe bring people along the journey. But realistically, man, if you want to do business, man, you got to do it by yourself, and you got to go venture off and find strangers and people who don't know you from a can of paint, because the people who do know you, they only know one image of you. They only know one version of you. They don't know this business side of you. It may be hard to even work with these people because they might bring up your insecurities. Oh, yours yelling, man. That's why I hate working with you. That's why, yours yelling. You never know how these things could pretty much bring out the bad in everybody. You know what I'm saying? Cursing, bad language, and just, resentment. That's why I'm really going to say resentment. And in business, there's always a person who has the face, right, for it. And I remember I was working with somebody, and they were trying to push me to the side and make the other person the face. And I was a little like, what's going on here? You know what I'm saying? It was a little, what's the word? Weird. You know what I'm saying? Hey, let this person be the face of the business. But I'm like, why? Like, I literally asked myself, and I asked them why. I was like, why would I make you the face of the business if everybody knows us as the people who's running the business? Why do you have to gear this towards you only? You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that was like more so a low blow to saying, hey, I have more notoriety than you. I have more brand awareness than you. And that was one of those moments I was like, you know what, Mo? It's better just to work by myself. And me working by myself, you guys, took me to build my 6-7 figure portfolio. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't sit here being a partner with anybody and having their face as the driving hood of my success. If I'm the person behind it, I want to be the person who's showing the face. I want to be the person who is taking all the questions. I want to be the person who is on the floor working. And there's nothing like dealing with like wanting to be that person. I just know I'm always been that person. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like me being a perfectionist, I am perfectionist and professional. I just feel like I have what it takes to endure a lot of things that a lot of people may not be able to endure. And I try to speak to my business partner about that, and they weren't listening. They were just like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And I knew at that very moment, working with people is kind of hard. And eventually it led to more demises down the line, because me trying to bring people along, man, it did more harm than good. People don't respect the fact that they know you. You're a friend. You're doing business. You're probably making money. So when you bring people along, they probably already have that pre-built jealousy and envy in them that you don't really know. You don't know what your friends really feel like. So that's why I try to tell people, cut both into two livelihoods. You have a business life, and you have a friendship life. And once you start getting those two situated, you now know who you can work with. You now know who you shouldn't work with. Don't even entertain. And it's a tough pill to swallow when you realize majority of your sales, your repost, the shares, the acknowledgement, the encouragement is all from strangers and never from people you know. And that should tell you a lot, man. Everybody should tell you that your biggest clients is not going to be your friends and family. It's going to be people you don't know from a can of paint. And you might be like, damn, why is that? And I can't even tell you. I just feel like two of those things should not ever collide. Bringing friends into business and bringing business to friends. Keep those two lives separate. And then when people ask you how things are going, Everything's always going good, man. Despite things might be up in flames, because people sometimes like for things to go bad for you, if they're not part of it. And that's also a very scary thing that you have to be able to figure out early on and realize, because not everybody has the same intentions as you. So what I tell people all the time is always work with people who you feel like are more competent in business and don't have any real ties to you. Like they don't know who you were before, during, or after. They just know you for this very moment, and that's their perception. So I appreciate you guys for listening to Roll the Business Podcast. If you guys haven't already, work with only those who already been doing business. If you first starting a business together with somebody, you don't know them, that's fine. Make sure everything is in contracts, and then also have an attorney hold funds, in escrow accounts. I made a mistake of working with people in the past where I directly wired to them, and they did a lot of bullshit. A lot of people are going to be sick, in the next few months when I come double back around and circle around for my money. But don't work with people who don't know the real order of business. You know what I'm saying? Contracts. Let's get documentation going. Let's have money held at escrow. Let's do things by the book. If your friends want to say, hey, wire me the funds, or let's just get this contract and sign it another day, and all that shit, man, don't even do none of that shit, because that shit's horrible. You know what I'm saying? So once again, I appreciate you guys for listening to Roll the Business Podcast. It's been an amazing journey. I appreciate everybody who's been sharing the podcast. Obviously, people who've been encouraging me and showing me love, man. I appreciate you guys. The last episode, the last homeowners, I believe that's what I made. I believe, if it's not the last episode, I'm sorry, but that episode did really well with the 50-year mortgage that I spoke about. If you guys have any more questions, DM me, shoot me an email, send me a text if you have my number and everything like that. But I try to give everybody a little bit of everything. And today's episode was just saying, hey, don't work with friends, bro. Just work with people who are competent in business, and, keep friendship for friendships and business for business, and don't ever mix the two. So once again, I appreciate you guys for listening to Roll the Business Podcast. It's been an amazing journey, man. You guys take care.